Hi, I'm Gigi Duban, and on this episode of Alabama Inc., we take a tour of some teeny tiny houses in Greensboro, Alabama, and how some think it's one way to ease the region's affordable housing shortage. Pat Duggins chats with Rob Burton, head of Hoare Construction, one of Alabama's biggest construction firms. And Joe Calamusa from the University of Alabama's Business School sits down with Josh to talk about easy ways to screw up a job interview. All that's coming up on Alabama Inc. In Hale County, you've got almost a third of the population living in poverty. So affordable housing is sort of an oxymoron, especially for older residents. But the folks at Auburn's Rural Studio think they've got the answer: the $20,000 house. You'd never know it just driving through, but in this little country town in Hale County, there's an experiment going on. Auburn University Rural Studio is trying to perfect the tiny house. If it works, it could mean affordable, sturdy housing for people across the country. Andrew Freer is the director of Auburn University's Rural Studio.
Given our situation out here where there's lots of particularly elderly folks who are living in poor conditions, I have the kind of student-free labor. The students are coming out here and taking a class. They're actually paying to do this, right? We have this really remarkable opportunity to test a house iteratively, to develop a house, a really good, beautiful, affordable house for everybody.
Students in the program design and build the houses. Of course, no design is perfect, but whatever works stays and ideally becomes better. Whatever doesn't gets chucked. Freer says it's a work in progress. Through all of this, there's just one rule. You can't spend more than $20,000.
But we said, what could we build for $20,000? Because that's the amount that somebody could afford to pay for a mortgage every month. So we said, okay, what can we do for $20,000? We then split that number up into 13 in materials and 6 in labor and profit, and said, can we make a profitable model here? So we're not only building a small, affordable, beautiful home for people, but we're also establish a small industry of house building, right? A cottage industry of home building, built with the materials from the local building supply, using local labor. So that's the idea. Now, whether it works or not, we're trying to figure that out.
Every house uses similar construction methods and materials, but they're all different in a way. For instance, the house the Rural Studio built for Joanne Davis isn't identical to any other house. She gives us a quick tour.
It's Joanne. I'm Gigi Duban. It's nice to meet you.
I'm Joanne. It's nice to meet you.
Good to meet you. So, can we get a look around?
Yes, you can. Help yourself.
Okay.
This is the living room
Okay.
and the bathroom and the bedroom
Okay.
and your utility room.
Utility room behind this big black curtain.
Yes, behind the black curtain is the utility room.
That's where your washer is.
Washer and the hot water heater.
Okay. It's actually bigger, the kitchen especially, is bigger than I expected it to be.
Yes, it
This
is.
whole place is what, 800 something square feet?
Yes, I think it is. And well, it's big enough for the little me.
It's big enough for you.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I actually, when I pictured it, I thought that you would be standing in the kitchen like this, bumping into the stove,
No.
and then turn around, bumping into the. So
No.
it's not like that.
No, I can go up and down, up and down.
Joanne heard about the housing program and got a few more details. The fact that the house would be a tight squeeze wasn't a problem.
Did he tell you how big the house was going to be?
Yes.
And what did you think about that?
Really good because it was just me because my son moved away and it was just me, and for cleaning it's just the right size.
It doesn't take very long to clean a place this size, does
No.
it?
No, and I'm such a clean freak and I keeps it clean.
When people hear that this house is a $20,000 house, what's their reaction?
They don't believe it. They think it should be more.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to believe.
Yeah.
Just looking at it, you wouldn't think.
Yeah, but they, everybody says, wow.
Every semester, a new wave of students comes out to live in New Bern for a semester. And a lot of them wonder how it's even possible to pull off a house for $20,000.
How are you able to build a house for so little money?
And therein lies the trick. That's what's been the thesis, really, the main body of thought behind these houses is how do we squeeze down the square footage? How do we make the details, the way the materials come together, as simple as we possibly can so that it makes the construction go quickly and it makes the materials are something you can buy easily at any hardware store or Lowe's or Home Depot around in your area.
I mean, give me an example. What kind of materials are we talking about?
We're talking almost all 2x4 and 2x6s to construct it. We're talking about having roof metal as opposed to roof shingles. We're careful to pick the right color for that and arrange the windows just so that you get the right lighting and everything. But basically just cutting costs in those ways that don't really affect the way you live in it or really even the way it's perceived as being low-cost housing.
The team has built a dozen versions of the $20,000 house. And so far, the people in these houses think the space is just fine. Andrew says Americans' houses are way bigger than they need to be.
I think the average American house home size is 2,500 square feet. What the heck do people do in a house that's 2,500 square feet? They bounce around like ping pong balls. I mean, they never see each other. I guess that's the point. So we're deliberately saying, can you live smaller and be able to live affordably? And don't live beyond your means.
Let's do it.
So you can see we don't have the gypboard in yet, but we'll get ready for this. But just to kind of walk you through, this alcove here is the kitchen. And then we have the living room space right here, and then behind we have the bedroom and the bathroom and the utility closet.
So this is about how many weeks into the building process, what we're seeing here?
We've been trying to keep a construction timeline, and I believe this is day 43 of construction, but a lot of those are half days.
Wow. This is day 43 with a lot of half days built in. You've done a lot in a short period of time.
And there are plenty more houses under construction. The Rural Studio plans to sell its house plans across the country. Because while affordable housing is a problem here in Alabama, it's not the only place. Coming up next on Alabama Inc.
There's a certain amount of pride that always comes out of the construction industry, being able to say, we built that.
Okay, show of hands, who's been to Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida? For that reason, Rob Burton of Hoare Construction in Birmingham has got to be popular with his kids. That company did a lot of the improvements to the Vacation Kingdom in Florida, and here's how we got from here to there. Your father founded the company here, or helped to found it, and I'm wondering, growing up, did he leave it at the office? Or did he kind of bring it home and kind of like, sitting around the dinner table, he talked about the projects he was doing and things like that?
He was very, very emotionally involved in it, cared a lot about it. My mother took pride in it. So there was conversations around the dinner table. I was able to learn by listening to all kinds of things. And of course, I grew up with him kind of playing with us, eating dinner, putting us to bed, and then if I got up in the middle of the night, I'd see him studying drawings on the dining room table. So it was around me all the time.
Now, we've spoken to a number of second-generation CEOs of companies, either family-owned or otherwise, and it's kind of like, these folks could have gone off and been successful at other things, and yet they wound up in the quote-unquote family business. What was it about it that attracted you?
There's a certain amount of pride that always comes out of the construction industry, being able to say, I built that. And it doesn't matter whether you're a laborer or a carpenter or a CEO, you walk away with a sense of, look what we did. And it could have been that I was brainwashed at an early age because my father would say, well, look, we built that. And so I still drive by buildings today that I remember my father going, we built that.
Now, looking to the future, I mean, you had your dad to inspire you in terms of like construction, but in terms of like, making this into an industry that young people would kind of be attracted to, either learning how to be an architect, learning how to operate the equipment, that sort of thing, what's the difficulty with that?
Well, there's on different levels. There are, I think people who are going to college or who have a bent towards construction or engineering, there's still a great need for engineers. And so somebody who got an engineering degree and came into construction could also decide if they didn't like it, there's a lot of other fields that they could learn from. So even a person with an architecture degree or an engineering degree who tried it in our industry and didn't like it still has better prepared to go and do other things. But I think the bigger problem in our industry is not attracting engineers and professionals, it's attracting craftsmen and tradesmen. There's this stigma about being outdoors in a dirty environment, doing hot, sweaty work. And in, the old days of America, you took pride in that. It was an important thing to be able to say I have a craft and that there's something I can do with my hands. Many of these people don't realize that you don't have to go to college to build a great career in the construction industry. If you go out there and you're a laborer and you learn all about how concrete's put together and then you become maybe a carpenter foreman and a carpenter, then you can become a foreman and then a superintendent. And the next thing you know, you're one of the men that's out there building for Disney.
At any point in your career, have you been out on a site like this and say, forget the suit and the tie, I want to get in the front end loader, I want to get on that vehicle?
Absolutely. Absolutely. When you see a superintendent out here who's wanting to drive a piece of equipment, they're really trying to get out of the stress and get their mind off the business for a minute. So it's a lot of fun to play with all those toys, but we have to do the jobs we're sent here to do, right?
Yeah, there we go. No, you're talking about boys and toys and a lot of the really fun stuff here. So what exactly is going on here?
Well, we're at the site of the Brock School of Business at Samford University, and we are building a new School of Business to house the entire School of Business.
But since this is Samford University and a lot of these buildings are made up of like, old-fashioned traditional classic style brick,
Right.
There's been a lot of thought, I understand, that goes into making this building blend in with everybody else.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this campus has its design and its architecture, so it's going to follow the exact same venue that has been before it. And what's interesting about the business is most people drive by and they'll see these beautiful buildings on campus, but they never know all of this is behind it. And there's an awful lot that goes underneath that skin.
Well, closer to home down in the Mobile area, you all are in the process of building the new manufacturing plant for Airbus.
That's monumental.
I was going to say, how much of it, was that a departure or is it kind of like, just another project or what?
The issue there was that we already had a relationship with Airbus because we had built their engineering facility. They were happy with us, they liked us, and then they come back around and decide to build commercial airliners, and we were the natural choice. So that project is going wonderful, it's huge, it's fun. It's interesting to see how they build these airplanes and to know that we're a part of it.
Following the Tuscaloosa tornado, the city, for example, and all of Alabama was impacted by the storms, but in Tuscaloosa particularly, they took a look at the notion of new urbanism. In other words, trying to create areas where people live, work, play, all in the same spot. So, in a strange sense, I mean, is that creating opportunities for you all to pursue this because of the adversity of having a bad storm in the area?
Absolutely. When there is some sort of devastation, there's always a rebuild, and that's unfortunate, but it does create opportunities. When a lot of the hurricanes, you may remember several years ago, there were maybe 3 or 4 hurricanes in one year, and so we had clients calling us all over the country saying, hurry, come please rebuild this. When you have a real area that's devastated, like you can look at Gulf Shores, how at one time it was kind of the redneck Riviera, but now all of a sudden it's coming back nicer and nicer because of the storms. So it's actually being rebuilt in a better way.
For just years and years, 30 years actually, my wife and I resided in Central Florida, in Orlando, and we have fond memories of going out, you know, to Disney World and the parks, and I understand that, frankly, you kind of built most of it.
No, that's an exaggeration.
Oh, okay. Well, take us on the landmarks that when people from Alabama go down to the Mouse House that you all did.
Well, that's actually one of my favorite clients and one of the things I've enjoyed the most because it made me famous with my children too. You know, if you build a part of Disney World, then your children think you're a hero. So, you know, we have built, I don't know, somewhere around 15 different projects for Disney. It started out with the World of Disney, which was a shopping center project. And fortunately, we'd done a good enough job with that they asked us to come back and build an office building inside of MGM theme park. And this is in a building where they were doing all the animated movies. So it was a very high-tech building for the times. So anyway, they found out that we could build inside that park, and the next thing they know, they said, well, would you like to build an indoor roller coaster? And I said, let me count how many of those we've built. And so absolutely yes.
That was the rock and roll roller coaster.
So we built the rock and roller coaster at MGM in a design build contract, which was fascinating and fun. And that's the one that really made me famous with my children.
Mr. Burton, thank you so much.
Coming up next on Alabama Inc.
Maybe you have a costume. If you've got the costume, bring it with you.
Wear it to the interview.
No, that would be something I wouldn't.
Each week on Alabama Inc., we bring in one of our show experts to talk with correspondent Josh Sneed. Our expert gives Josh a top 5 list, and Josh takes it from there. This week, it's Joe Calamusa of the University of Alabama Business School. He lays out how to fail at a job interview.
It turns out that hideous tie might not be the only thing that ruined your job interview. Joe Calamusa is a marketing professor from the University of Alabama, and he's here to tell us what to stay away from during the interview process. But seriously, lose the tie. All right, Joe, thanks for coming in. We appreciate it.
Absolutely, glad to be here.
All right, this is your first time, so we're going to be kind of easy on it. Okay?
Please do.
All right. So what do you got for us today?
Well, I want to talk today about the 5 things to do in an interview if you don't want the job.
So if you don't want the job.
You do not want the job.
So basically, these are the worst things you could possibly do.
The worst things you could do if you want the job, yes, absolutely.
Okay, so let's get it going. What do you got?
Well, I guess the first thing, number 5, would be forget the basics. You've got to make sure you do the
take
fundamental
a shower.
things. Yeah, take a shower. The biggest things are being late, having mistakes on your resume. You can be a
like
great
lies?
fit.
Like lies or mistakes?
Well, it could be just typos and grammatical errors and formatting things, or lies. Lies will hurt you.
Like I fought crime. I mean, you got to fill those gaps somehow,
If
right?
you put Crime Fighter on there, there better be some arrests that you've made or something.
Well, freelance crime fighting, you don't get the callers.
Maybe you have a costume. If you've got the costume, bring it with you.
Wear it to the interview.
No, that would be something I wouldn't do. That would be number 2. So don't wear your costume.
Okay.
To the interview. Right. Just making sure you do those fundamental things that are going to turn people off. You know, if you're late, if you have mistakes, those kind of things.
Yeah, and you would think those would be basic, but like you said, a lot of people
forget them. People spend a lot of time preparing for an interview, and then they're 5 minutes late for it and wonder why they didn't get the job.
Right.
Or didn't even get into the interview.
Okay, good point. All right, next one.
Number 4 would be not having a plan.
Right.
A lot of people go into an interview and think it's purely I'm there only to answer the questions. So they don't have any sort of preset message. They just go in, sit down, sort of grab a hold of the chair and fire away. And whatever you've got, I'll answer it. That kind of thing. So and they're just reacting to the interviewer instead of delivering a pre-planned message. That's the big key to defensive interview.
Right. Okay, number 3.
Number 3 is not knowing enough about the company. People usually know the job description.
Yeah.
But they don't know anything else. The more you know about the company itself, and not just its history when it was founded, but what it's going through now, what issues it's dealing with now. An interview is all about whoever knows the most usually wins. So if you can provide that you've made the effort to do research, then you're okay. If you go in and you don't know anything about the company besides what they posted on the job description, then you're not going to get the
So if I want a prestigious job, like if I wanted to be Taylor Hicks's bodyguard,
okay.
I would need to do the research. I need to know who Taylor Hicks is.
The rise and fall of Taylor Hicks, know about the viewership of American Idol, know about the 7 people that show up for Taylor Hicks concerts. Know about all of those types of things.
Too soon.
All 7 of them.
Okay,
And their bios.
Okay, all right. I think the wound is still fresh. Let's go to the next one, number 2.
Number 2 is not having evidence. So a lot of people will put on a resume things that they say they've accomplished, and they'll discuss it in an interview, but they don't have any evidence or examples to back it up. I have these skills. Well, tell me why or how you have these skills, and there's nothing
show me
left.
the proof.
Show me the proof.
Yeah.
You've got to have hardcore examples. Numbers help especially.
So if I'm going to be a bodyguard, obviously I have to maybe like bust out a couple push-ups for him.
The number, yes, your bench would be good. Your bench record, how many squats, how many times you can squat 300. Those kind of things would help you. Any kind of, and really truly any sort of backup, so they're not just trusting you. The interviewer doesn't just trust that you've done these things.
Right.
Have evidence of what you've done. If you go into that interview without any evidence or examples, you're not gonna get that job.
Okay, that's good. All right, so we're down to number 1. What do you got?
The number one thing to do in an interview if you don't want the job is when it's over, just get up and leave. You've got to ask.
Thank you, and then run.
Yeah, you got to ask for the position. If you're not,
No, that's something a lot of people might not think of.
They don't.
Because you're right. They go in defensive. They think, I'm just going to answer these questions, hope I made a good impression. And
hope for the best, cross my fingers, and go wait by the phone.
Yeah.
There are usually a lot of people pursuing these positions, so you want to make it known at the end that you want this job, you're qualified for the job, ask for it.
Right.
Could
So you don't have to stand up and say, oh, great, when do I start? Like, that's probably a little too far.
Yeah, I'll be here tomorrow morning at 8. I wouldn't go that route.
Your office looks nice, thank you.
But at least, this is a position that I'm interested in, and I feel I'm qualified for it, and so I'd like to know what the next steps are. At the very least, something like that.
All right, Joe, well, I think you got us prepared for an interview.
I hope so.
I think I'm ready to call Taylor Hicks. Taylor, if you're watching, which you probably aren't, I'm coming. And you need these. These are my references right here.
Don't send your bodyguard for me.
1 and 2.
That's our show for this week. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Keep up with the stories we're working on and tell us what you think. I'm Gigi Douban, and we'll see you next time on Alabama Ink.